Hi everybody, this is lesson 5.7 and we're going to be going over angles and parallel lines. So for this video, we're going to learn how to use properties of parallel lines to calculate like unknown values. Okay, but in order to do that, we need to know how to identify opposite, complementary, and supplementary angles, which are terms that you should have learned in the previous lesson, and you'll probably need to know them for this lesson. Okay, but the core of this lesson is to be able to identify parallel lines and transversals. And once you understand what those are, they give rise to three theorems or rules called alternating, corresponding, and co-interior angles. So that is the basic core of this lesson. And then we're going to have to practice, obviously. So practicing involves being able to find unknown values for certain variables, and then being able to also identify which of the rules we use to find our answers. Okay, so before all that, let's get started on just learning what parallel lines and transversals are. So parallel lines are lines that go on forever but never touch each other. So imagine that these orange lines continue in both directions forever. They're actually never going to touch. Now, a transversal is a line that cuts through those parallel lines. Okay, so if you take a look over here, you'll see that I have a lot of examples on the right-hand side of parallel lines and a transversal. Okay, now when you have those parallel lines and the transversal, they give rise to three different rules: the alternating angles, the corresponding angles, and the co-interior angles. Okay, so let's take a look at each one. Alternate angles are where you see a Z pattern within the diagram. So you'll notice that I've already mapped out a Z right here, and that looks like a regular Z. Now your Z could also be backwards. All right, now once you've identified the Z pattern in the diagram, it actually has a rule attached to it. And so that rule is, see the peaks or those tips? Inside each of those tips are angles, and those angles are equal to each other. And so I've put letters there, the C and the F, and we just say, well, angle C and angle F are equal. In an example, what they'll do is they'll give you one of them and they'll say, okay, well, let's just say that C is 40 degrees. What is F? So then you'll be like, oh, okay, you know what? I see the Z pattern, so C and F are the same, which means that F must also be 40 degrees, and you'd be right. If your Z is backwards, it's the same thing. Those peaks or those tips, the angles that are found inside them are going to be equal. So I kind of wrote that over here. So if this one is like 100 degrees, and they ask you what's E, you're going to go, okay, well, it's also 100 degrees because of alternating angles. Now the next rule is, instead of looking for a Z, you're going to look for an F. So this one has an F that goes this way. Now your F could be backwards, like that. Okay, or it could be upside down, like this. Now once you see your F, you're going to need to know what the rule is, and the rule is, underneath the branches, so the top branch and that middle branch of the F, those angles found underneath are the same. So D is equal to H. Just be careful if your F is upside down that this branch, it's not like below it, it's actually above it. And so those angles are the same as well. So if they tell you, hey, this is 100 degrees, you're going to go, okay, well, this is actually also 100 degrees. And I know that because of the corresponding angles. Now the very last one is looking for a C pattern. So the C is not like a curvy C, it's like a very block kind of C, and it could be backwards. Now you'll already notice that it's not the same as the other two rules. Like this and this are not going to be the same. They don't even look the same. Like one of them is an acute angle, like less than 90 degrees, and the other one is an obtuse angle, over 90 degrees. So this one has a different rule, and that's where they both add up to 180. So when you add both of those together, you should get 180. Let me give you an example. D could be 100 and you would have to find f and say, oh, okay, so if both of them add up to 180, then f must be 80 degrees, because now you can add them both and they'll make 180. This is the type of formula that I like to use when I'm tackling any C questions. Let's take a look at some examples. So we're going to do a couple of examples, and they're asking us to find the missing angles. What is x and what is y? Not only do you have to find those, but you also have to give a reason. So which rule did you use? Did you use rule number 1, alternating, rule number 2, the corresponding, or rule number 3, the co-interior? Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you one of them. Okay, so the first thing I see is a C. And I know that it's backwards, but let's just take a look at what that rule said again. Okay, so the C pattern is this one, and it looks like the inside angles have to add to 180. All right, so that means x and the 71 degrees, don't forget your degree sign, is 180. This is a simple equation. I can solve it very easily, so I'm going to get you to solve it. Now I want x by itself. It's going to give you an answer, and just don't forget your degree symbol. So then you would have found the answer for the missing angle. You'll know what x is. To give your reason, we're going to put it in brackets. Okay, and your reason is going to be co-interior angles, because that's the name of the rule. So you would just write down co-interior angles. All right, and then you'd be done for x. So let me show you what I did. The red is all on the right-hand side, and I've solved for x already, and I got 109. So this is 109 degrees, and you got the answer for this. For the y now, I'd probably use something else, and what I'm looking for is either a Z pattern, an F pattern, or a C pattern. And I actually see a Z pattern. Now that means that, remember, inside the peaks or those tips, those angles are the same. So there's no calculations. If the top one is 71, that means the bottom one must also be 71. This is all I wrote. Y equals 71 degrees, so I found the angle, but I'm also going to give the reason, which is it's called alternating angles. And we're done. We have our answer for x, and we have our answer for y. All right, let's take a look at another example. So number 2. I don't know if you can see, can you guys see the two parallel lines and then the transversal? All right, so if you have the two parallel lines and the transversal, that means you must be able to see a C, an F, or a Z. That will help you to find N. Okay, so if I have, let me see, it looks kind of like maybe an F pattern that says that these two angles should be the same. Now you're going to have to look back and see what that's called. I have the full solution right here. If they're the same and you're using an F pattern, that is called corresponding angles. So I found the value, and I've also provided the reason. Okay, so that one was pretty easy. Now we're going to get into hard ones. Okay, now we have 3 letters, holy cow. X, Y, and W. You don't have to find X first all the time. You can find Y first or W, it really doesn't matter. But I think I might find X first because I'm seeing a Z pattern right here. And I know that if this is 80, then that one must also be 80 because of alternating angles. Now I see another Z pattern right here. Well, it's a little messy. All right, so if this is 30, then this one must be 30 as well because of, again, alternating angles. And I've written that all out right here. So on the right-hand side again, you have X is 80 degrees because of alternating angles, and Y is 30 degrees because of alternating angles. But the hard one that's going to be just a little bit more difficult to find is the W. So we know this is 80 for the X, and we know that this one is 30. So I got to reach into my bag of tricks And all the properties that I've learned, and there was one from the last lesson that we had learned called supplementary angles, and that's where if you have this straight line and you cut it up into chunks so that x, the w, and the y, they'll all add together to make 180. Okay, and again, that's called supplementary angles. So, since I already know what my x is, I'm going to just put that right down there, and I'm going to get rid of the x and put an 80 instead. But I don't know what w is, so I'm just going to write the w again. I know what y is, which is 30, so I'm going to replace the y with a 30, and I'm just going to write equals to 180. All right, now I'm going to start solving for w by bringing these two guys to the other side, and they will make negative 80 and negative 30. And when you calculate those, you're going to get w is 70 degrees. Okay, and we have our rule off to the side. Now the very last one, they put it in the form of a shape, but we still use the same rules that we did before. So I'm seeing, it's a couple different things. You know what, why don't I go into my answer and I'm just going to show you. Okay, so there was a Z pattern with the Y and the 52. So I noticed this is a 52 and this is the other tip of that Z. And so Y is 52 degrees. This is a 52 because of alternating angles. Now, what else did I find? Okay, so getting rid of all this, I focused on the blue, which is inside a triangle. You should know that all three of these angles add up to 180. That was something in the last lesson. And so I wrote x plus 71 plus 52 is 180 degrees because of the sum of the interior angles in a triangle. So the sum of all the inside angles of that triangle is 180. And so I did my calculations and I got x being 57. So I know this one's going to be 57 degrees. All right, and the very last one, which is the green, again, let me get rid of that. So we had just found that this one was 57. It's pretty easy because I see another Z pattern right here. It's sideways, but it's still a Z. So if this is 57, then the Z must also be 57, and again, that is alternating angles. Okay, so using that F pattern, that Z pattern, the C pattern, so the alternating, corresponding, and co-interior theorems, you should be able to apply those and find any unknown letters and then be able to tell us which rule did you use. Now finally, all the homework from the textbook is right down here, so that's what we'd like you to tackle for this week.